Hey everyone, welcome to another Common Lisp Study Group. I'm your host Ron Baden with Atlanta Functional Programming. Today we're going to be talking about command line parsing in Common Lisp. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how to match kind of like Unix command line options when writing utilities in Common Lisp. And in particular, there are two specific libraries that I was finding when I was trying to address this problem the other day, both of which I think are somewhat interesting. One is older, was available since 2009, called unix-options, and another one was unix-opt, which was a recent one that I found as well. Both of these are available as far as I can tell, but we could just go ahead and check this by quick Lisp. unix-options definitely was, most certainly was, but you can also see that unix-opts is also available too. unix-options has a newer, is a much newer one, but it's because it's trying to match functionality that's available in a couple of other libraries, which I'll mention later on today. Before we begin, a couple of just things. Folks who are enjoying AFP's Common Lisp Study Group's videos, please like the videos so that way folks can start seeing them in the search results when they're searching for Common Lisp videos. Additionally, if you want to know more about our upcoming videos, as usual, please hit the subscribe button to join our channel. We not only now cover Common Lisp, we're also covering Haskell as well, which is our weekly study group series that happens every Sunday from 1:30 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So to begin and get the conversation going, I thought I would first talk a little bit about just command line parsing in general. And in order for me to do this, I'm going to have to I just realized I'm going to have to not share my Emacs buffer, but I'm going to have to share my terminal to really get things going. Give me just 1 second here. Terminal window. And that. I'm going to share you guys my terminal window here to our streaming audience. Okay. Awesome. So, let me just do this. And also, okay. All right. So, and let me just increase the font size here. Okay. So most of you who are familiar with Unix and with Linux command utilities probably know of command line parsing or have used command line options in various shapes or forms with any of the utilities that you use with day to day, whether it be ls when you're trying to do, like, for example, listing directories. If you're going into, say, a directory and you're trying to look for, permissions in all the hidden files, or if you're looking at, say, if you're going into even just using like utilities like say netcat, which allows you to, it's a command line utility that allows you to pretend to listen in on a particular socket, so that way you can, test particular messages coming in on that socket and actually sniff the traffic a little bit to test out particular message protocols that you might be writing, whether it be HTTP requests that might be going into a web service or some sort. And you can see a lot of these by just simply going into, like, say, the man page for the appropriate utility. Now, oftentimes is the case when building these programs in other languages, say, for example, C or C++, you might end up having this, you might encounter this issue where you're going to end up writing, in many cases, well, let's just, let me just show you an example here. I'm going to go ahead and create a test utility here by, let's call this a simple test utility. And we're going to use Roswell to get this going a little bit, just to make things a little bit easier for ourselves. Roswell, as many of you know, and we do have a video that covers this, is a utility that gives you the ability not only to keep track of many different installed versions of Common Lisp, but it also provides you the ability to write scripts that you can then leverage as Unix shell scripts pretty quickly. And of course, you can certainly build them as well by using RosBuild. I'm just showing you the list of commands that are available here. So to get started and to create a new ROS script as a review, we have to obviously use ROS-init. We're going to just call this, utility, and we could build a realistic utility for our purposes. Let's say we're just creating a dummy echo server, okay? Echo server.ros, all right? This is a simple server that we'll just end up leveraging, and we'll build up the utilities accordingly. Now, if we open this up, let me just do this, Emacs NW echo server ROS. It'll take a minute just because it's trying to start up. There we go. Okay. And we can later on, turn on Sly if we need it to get things started. It might actually be useful just for the sake of testing our examples. Let me go ahead and start up Sly here by doing okay, hold on a second. There we go. That should have worked. Okay. Okay. And let me just also do this. All right. So in here, we might end up, for example, in our main utilities, often the case in starting out when you're writing command line utilities, you will take advantage of the fact that we're getting all the arguments here and you might end up writing something along the lines of a loop construct that will essentially, check for item in, for item in argv. And here we're just going to go for the sake of example, and we're going to build up our echo server later on during the course of today's session using the different command line options that are available. Command line option libraries that are available. But for now, we're just going to simply just print out the command line operations just to illustrate something here. You might end up doing something like, do print item. Okay. This is a very simple script that just does nothing more than, since this is no longer needed, we'll just delete that. That will just simply list out the arguments from this item. And eventually I'm going to show you when we build this executable how might that end up getting executed. So we go ahead and we, obviously compile this guy locally. Let's just go and check it here. In here we might end up passing in a couple of things. Let's say -p 8000 -x -l, which will put it into server mode, or even like sort of a -d. They'll throw it up into its code execution, and you'll see that it'll dump these guys out. Now, and just to show you, not right now. Every time I open up a new terminal, ZSH seems to like to upgrade itself. So let me go into the directory that I created earlier, which is our test utility. Okay, and we're just going to go ahead and build this guy. Okay, it's a really dumb script that I just showed you. It's not really doing anything right now, but it is something that that is useful to be aware of. Now, I've noticed this for folks who are using Roswell. I'm not sure if folks who are using SBCL have seen this, but occasionally I've seen SB eval no longer present in features throwing up in here. It might be that Roswell has gotten a newer version I haven't updated in a while, but just something to be aware of. Recently I started seeing this behavior. So now we have this echo server, and before, like I said, if we don't pass in anything, nothing happens. But if I pass in, say -p 8000 -l, maybe -d, and it'll just go ahead and dump those guys out. All right. But if we look at the actual code that we have here, although it's not doing something, it is quite telling what exactly is an issue with this approach. You're going to have to go and check to see, because this essentially is an associative list. If you actually look at it, right, it's key argument, key value, and so forth. And now sometimes some keys may have a value of nothing, others may have. So you want to have a library that can actually give you the ability to set these up in such a way that you could get these pairs directly. So now you will know whether or not -p had a value associated with it or not, and you could take some action based on whether or not a particular flag exists, and so forth. In the C and command line options world, if you weren't using Common Lisp, you might be using something like, say, get-opt, which is a utility that allows you to parse command line options at the shell level. And I think if you actually do a look for it in the search results, you might get something along the lines of -k, maybe it's that's what I was looking for. No, this is the wrong thing. Wait. This is the right thing, and it's only getting nothing appropriate. Okay, it's the only thing that's available. But to get back to what getopt is doing, getopt does nothing more than this is the shell version, and I know that there is a version similar to this in Unix in the C library, at least on Linux as well, and maybe even BSD, where you can actually do something similar, where you can pass in an option and it will provide it. I think that might be a third-party library, but I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head right now. But this utility, what it does is it will grab the options and it will split them. You know, there's like this little case kind of like thing that you could then use to grab the command line operations. Actually, man3 is probably what I want to look at. Yeah, this is the one. This is in the standard C library. For folks who aren't familiar with this, all it does is it will take you the number of arguments, the character string, and then it will return in the third argument the option string that would be the individual characters. Right. Right. And this is essentially what you would use to parse the options in your command line options inside C. Now, obviously, this is, if you look at the signature here, this is a little bit for folks who are looking at this. Really, what you want at the end is something more along the lines of a dictionary that would give you whether or not a particular command line operation exists or not, and you have to do some additional parsing once you end up leveraging if you're leveraging getopt directly. And this is an example of how might you end up using get options from a character string in argument or in a standard C program. There have been many innovations that kind of went on top of this get options library that's already been mentioned. Thank you. I just noticed a comment about a mistake in my yeah, there's a mistake here in a typo that I wrote. That's why I didn't get it earlier. I had a typo in there. Thank you to my to one of my members who sent me the message that there is I had a typo in my command line. Anywho, so as I was mentioning, there have been many innovations on top of this kind of like approach that C has provided in the in getopt, and those come in the form of actually Python's opt parse, as well as many other libraries for your command line options, particularly those that are in the ones that I've used directly was opt parse in Python. There is additionally in Java, there's a, if I remember correctly, there's a command line options utilities in the Apache Commons library that you can leverage. There are many of these, and at the end of the day, those all provide a data structure that will essentially give you the key value pairs that were passed in to the command line. As I mentioned, has a set of key value pairs that makes it easy to look up things. In Common Lisp, obviously there are similar utilities available at your disposal. I'm only mentioning two of them, but I'm sure that there are others out there. These two are one of them I've known about for a while. and at one point I used for some dummy utilities that I wrote, but it's been a while since I've touched it. And then this new one I found last night um, while I was looking for something similar. I was trying to look for the documentation of one, and then I ended up finding this other one. So I thought I'd cover both of them today. There's also, I would mention technically a third option, but this one I don't believe, as far as I know, has anything specific to command line options. So I'd have to just briefly mention, I think technically there may have been something dealing with command line arguments. Yes. There's technically also a third option using, say, uiop, but I think we covered it in a past episode. But I will briefly mention it to you here too as well, just so that we could try all three and do a compare and contrast. To begin with, the first library that we're going to be touching base on is probably the oldest one, the older one, which came out in 2009, and that is unix-options. Unix-options is nothing more than an imitation of what we just saw, which is getopt, the shell program that actually parses command line options. It came out in 2009, and it's a fairly stable library. I haven't heard any sort of like major issues with it, so that's why I'm briefly mentioning it here. Just to give note to folks that about unix-options, although the copyright and the code looks like it hasn't been touched in a while, the library itself is, from what I can tell, fairly stable. I have not seen any particular issues with this library, but again, it's been a while since I've touched it. I'm just going to briefly mention that last time, and it's been a few years, that I've used this, I haven't had any major problems with it. And we'll see a little bit how easy this library is. It's a pretty simple library, although it looks like they added a couple of features since I've last touched it. So we'll go through that too as well. One thing to note about this library, and I'm just going to mention it here for folks who are particularly concerned about licensing, because if you're writing especially commercial programs, this becomes very, very important. unix-options falls under not LGPL, but LLGPL. This is a Lisp-specific version of the LGPL. I encourage you to go Google more on LLGPL for more information. I don't remember specifically what the difference is right now, but I thought I'd mention it right now so that way you're not blindsided by the licensing restrictions. Now, the easiest thing to do with this example that we just have here, let's first load up a couple of libraries. Load up our Unix usocket library so we can actually get started on writing up our server. And again, unlike our normal ASD projects, if you're writing scripts, this is what you would normally do to end up setting up your scripts. And obviously, this kind of loading of your shell script, the Lisp libraries into your Lisp image prior to actually starting things out. Especially if you upgraded the library, you need to then upgrade the image. That could end up causing some slowdown when you want to effectively run the script. So I suggest you do some timing experiments before switching between running the script as is versus doing what I just showed you earlier, which is running ROS build, right? I think I may have mentioned this in the past, but I'm just going to go ahead and make that as a quick reminder. So now with usocket, we might end up first testing out Unix options. Let me just pull up something here. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Interesting question. I think so. There was a comment like, why not put this into the quick load? What is the purpose of this quick Lisp load? Actually, you could actually do what that suggestion, which is add here usocket, and that should do the same thing actually. Let me pull up, for example, our things, local projects, echo server, echo server.lisp. Okay, and have we written our echo server here? Let's take this for this example, just to simplify things. Because the other one requires Bordeaux threads. Let's do this one. Okay, and grab this guy. Nope, that's wrong. For folks wondering why I'm not using meta-x for some stuff, it's because of the fact that it's because, long story short, on iTerm, I'm using a Mac utility, a command line thing called iTerm that allows me to essentially run run some iTerm is a better terminal application, but in the process of me running iTerm, some of the key bindings, like the read line key bindings, don't work properly, and specifically Emacs, when I'm running it into shell mode, it doesn't work as I expect it to sometimes. So let's go ahead and add this guy here. No. Add this guy here. And let's get rid of this for the time being. For a second. Then we have our tool. Cool. Let's go ahead and re-indent this guy. Okay. So now all that's changed. So now we just need to pass in the, whoops, there is probably one more thing I forgot from here. Here, echo server, Ross, no, echo server, Lisp. There we go. Let's see here. Did I actually, let me do this. I only have the socket handling code for accepting new connections here. Let me do this. This and echo server Lisp. Okay, here we go. It looks like we're going to have to actually grab this one instead, because this is a more complete version of what we are trying to do, which means I'm going to add Bordeaux threads into this mix for today's demo, which is fine. Okay. Okay, let me just go ahead and do that. Kill this guy. Okay. And let's go ahead and switch this guy out here. And let's go ahead and change this to take in the port number. So this way we're grabbing in the port from the command line. And let's go ahead and change this here to take in a port that we just provided. So now we call, let me just this start echo server, and we will say right now we're going to just go ahead and wraps this guy around. The let that will eventually change this port to what we got from the command line. Okay. This is all kind of like a little boilerplate for our example for today, but once we start switching over to the command line option utilities, it'll become clear why I'm doing all this. Let's go ahead. Oh, I forgot to load up my command line utilities. Let me do that. So that's right, I forgot to load. Use socket, and I need to load Bordeaux threads. Let me see if I can do this. Systems. Okay. Okay, so that's loaded. That's compiled, and that's compiled. argv is not used right now because of the fact that we've currently gotten rid of it. Alright. And if we run this right now, we have our server running. We could do now if we netcat it, we can actually connect to it as a simple client. If I remember correctly, the command connect is we could do, actually we could also use telnet for example. Since this is a connection that we're just doing localhost, it's okay to do that here for, I think I just need to say telnet. It's been a while since I've used this, so let's see. There's no telnet here? Okay, if I can't use telnet, let's see. Let me see if I can do this. Localhost 168. Missing host name and port. There's P3768. We messed that up. Oh, thank you. Hostname port. Localhost. There we go. We switch back. We'll see that there's an error. Con is not of type list. Right, there was an issue with this one particular code here. Let me restart my Lisp because right now I can't stop this particular program. Okay, while that's running, I'm going to restart in a second. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Let's try to simplify this just for the sake of what we were doing.
Check the 6:26 p.m. comment.
Excuse me?
Check the chat at 6:26 p.m.
Ah. That's right. Thank you. I'm not complaining about that, but we'll see. Oh, once again, I have to go and reload a couple things. Not of type list. Of course it's not of type list. It's not supposed to be. I listen on the port. I set the connection. I declared it to be special. Okay, you know what? We don't need to do special variables right now, although technically when you're doing threads, it's encouraged to use special variables. But for the time being, since I'm not really doing anything spectacular for special variables, I will look into this. Because normally you'd want to write out special variables in the specific thing, but this is getting away from what I want to demo. Let me just quickly set this up. Okay, and that is okay. I'm just going to whip this up very quickly. Okay. Socket listener sock fd port. Then we have our loop. Socket wait for input. Hold on, let me just load something here. Ah, dang it. For and for now, I don't need Bordeaux threads. I'm just gonna write this all in single-threaded version. I thought I fixed this when I originally wrote this. Okay. So once we accept the socket, we're going to have to read from it, which I need to do in another loop. Let me actually split this guy. Come here, go down further. Actually, let me do this. I'll make this into a let star. This way I could do this. Client, stream. Okay, and then let's read. No, this actually has to go through a second loop. I forgot about that. Hold on one second. Let me get rid of this. This has to go into a second loop because we're now handling a specific connection. We do that, then we do Actually, we need it here to get a connection, and then we need another one here. That's what we need. And actually, we don't need to actually loop on it because we could always just return. Yeah, we do. Now. It's been a while since I've touched this this code, so I'm trying to remind myself what I did here. Okay, that's right. We have to go and create now our let star. Create our useSocket stream. Then we also have to grab data. What this is doing is just setting all up for a given connection. Okay, now obviously you want to be able to obviously here you want to check to make sure that string equal client quit data, so this way we can actually quit it, and then we close the socket. And we return. Otherwise, we just format, grab the data, and write it back. Okay, so now we have all that done. We just okay, let's see this. Everything loads, check, it's running, run, hello, and it is not returning client quit. Since it's blocking right now, you will not get it until you quit the connection. And it's because mainly the order in which this is running, this is doing, should be an if. And then let's wrap this guy, sp wrap round, and let's do sp slurp. Okay. make this into a prog-n. Okay. Else. Okay. So sp slurp. Okay. So now this guy is there. Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, still not going to work because of the way netcat works. All right. So we now have our main code to actually get through what we're going to be discussing today. The first thing we need to do is, let me just actually delete this piece here because we don't need this for our example. And I'll go ahead and post this, guys, to GitHub once I'm done with this. And in our example here, we have our Unix use sockets. We have a blocking board. We can certainly put this with Bordeaux threads too as well, but we don't need it for right now. The first library we're going to be talking about is going to be unix-options. Now this guy, like I said, is available at your disposal. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and load it in through Quick Lisp directly. Okay, and in here, we're going to go ahead and there's a couple of options in the way Unix options works, and just make sure that this all compiles the way I expect it to by doing the ROS build. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and run this very quickly, just to see if this all works, and then we can get. Yes, I do want it. That's fine. Load netcat here again. And this is all still using 32768. Hello, client, quit, and we can see that it's still working. Really, I should actually add technically a server stop, which we could certainly do so. But right now we don't need it for the sake of parsing command line options. Okay, so with Unix options, you have the ability to write your Unix options using an example called with client options, with CLI options, okay? And this is literally just an example of using like get opt straight from the shell. So I'm going to show an example here. Like if we use unix-options :get opt, and we provide a list of client options, okay, dash p dash l dash d. All right. And we might have, files like things and so forth. What this returns is literally, what, did I mess that up? Oh, that's right. That's right. It's taking a couple of other options. Okay. You can also provide short options too as well, like PLD. Right now, we're not going to provide any short options. And long options, obviously, dash port. You can provide a list of dash port, dash listen, dash daemon, and these are the long versions of these. And what it returns is an invalid option. Oh, that's right. The second option there is like I said, it's been a while since I've. Okay, that's fine. That's what I wanted. Okay. Okay. So let's look at the signature. The first options is the command line options that are being passed in. Okay. The second options are the list of the options that your program is going to take. And the third option is the list of the long versions of whatever options you have. So you may not have necessarily long versions of things. All right. So when you return this, you end up getting. Oops. Did I mess that up? Oh, is this supposed to be this PLD? Ah, now I see what the problem is. So let me try and explain what this is doing here. When get-opt get its stuff, it's going to get rid of. I forgot about this. This is every time I use this utility is the same thing. The get-opt utility has essentially. This is straight up from the C library, the way the C library works. And you're right. Someone mentioned that. Someone's mentioning that normally get-opt takes in a single string. This is a straight up port of get-opt, and in that I think it's actually using get-opt behind the scenes to actually create the things. So the first argument of get-opt is going to be your list of command line options. Okay. The second one is the list of options that are associated with a particular. It's the shorthand for those command line options. All right. So the way the documentation describes it is you can think of it as the form of that you would pass into the C function. It will be ABF colon. The colon is is dealing with essentially a permissible short option and a letter that's signifying that it is a parameter. Long options normally are in Unix the ones that are doing dash options with the equal sign. So here we actually kind of messed this up. Actually messed this up here. So in our long options, really this is going to be equals 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 equals, right? This is normally what you would have inside your command line. Okay, so here, if we pass in, say, dash dash port equals, it will recognize that the first three are short options, and the third one is going to be a long option. All right. So let's go and see how we can leverage this inside our utilities here. Okay. So one way of doing this is obviously first here. Let's actually complete our exploration. Let's say we do equals 80, 80 or something like that. What you end up getting is essentially kind of like an associative list that what we saw before. Okay. First is going to be a key and a value, although in this case, PLD do not necessarily have a value associated with them. Okay, so we could use ASOC, for example, and do port and our A list. Actually, I think it's ASOC. If key item list. There's a way to grab the specific thing again. I'm pretty sure that this is the way to get it. Let's see. In our A list, and let's see what happens. What is the error? P is not of type list, right? That's because we did not actually convert it. So if this is the case, then this is not actually doing one thing. It is returning the particular option in the list. Okay. Let's see how I might do this. How I might use this. So using this option here, we can actually set up something interesting. It looks like it's porting this way, and it might popularize it a particular a little differently than what getopt is actually doing. So the way you would use this library is you would end up using something called with client options, which is a macro that's associated with it, and I'll go ahead and sp wrap expressions, and then show you how this might be used here. For now, we need to get rid of that so we can actually use it. Unix options colon with client options, and this takes in the list of client options, the enabled usage summary. So if you want to like print out like particular port usage summary statistics, you can certainly do so. And then the option variables that are going to be associated with it, then those are particular flags. So I'll give you an example here. We might end up saying our client options is -p, -l, -d. Okay, and then we are going to then provide nil for the enabled client summary, but we don't really need to specify that because since it's an optional, we can actually not specify it. They'll just go ahead and bind it. And then we're going to provide a list of things associated with this. Let's see, listen port, listen, and honestly, we don't need daemon right now. We're just going to use these two options, okay? So now what's going to happen is behind the scenes, unix-options with client options will actually go ahead and generate a lambda that will tokenize these and actually make them into flags, okay? And it'll bind them. So now we could just simply use them accordingly. So let's go ahead and do that. We actually do not need now. We need to just do a check. We do not need this to be a let statement anymore. We just need this to be a check to see if there is an available listen port. So we just need to say, and actually we don't even need this listen anymore. So we can actually, we just simply need to, since we know that this is going to be a server that's going to be listening on a specific listen port, we could just simply say that. And we could just do when listen port, go ahead and listen on the listen port, and everything else is going to be fine. Okay. Otherwise, obviously, you'd want to be able to print out saying, let's say, no valid listen port provided. And then we'll just put a very dumb usage here, right? Actually, we'll go ahead and say that this way. And we have essentially, oops, there's one more thing we need to do, which is we need to pass in the command line options in the argv. So that is going to be associated with, just make sure, optional, defined but never used. It should be used though. Okay, let's see what happens here. This might be coming straight in from the command line. Okay, it should be p:. Okay. So you're saying that CLI options should be here, p colon.
That's for get opt,
Oh,
not with
forget.
CIOP.
This piece here is actually, it should be taking in the option variables are the ones that we're binding to. The enable usage summary is I see. This is going to be grabbing it straight from. This guy is taking in the map parsed options. Nil lambda option value. Where is it getting its information? Map parsed options. This guy. What is this guy doing? Okay, let me see here. This guy is taking in an option, token options. According to this should work, but we will see whether or not this is going to. Let's go ahead and build this guy. Build. Obviously, that's going to take a minute. The reason is so that I can actually use the command line utilities. If you're running this inside your REPL, one of the things that you will notice is that you will not necessarily get kind of the same behavior of the Unix options. So just be aware of that. Yeah, we're getting this warning with argv, but I'm wondering if it's getting its information from somewhere else. We will see.
Ram.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
On this terminal, type Shift Command D.
Shift Command D.
Yes.
Oh.
So you can run the program in the top one, and you can run netcat in the below one.
Yes. Okay. Shift Command D is the one. I'm so used to using tabs that I forgot that iTerm had that capability. All right. What was I gonna do? Oh, let me just see if this all works first. This should just dump an invalid option. P. Let's see. Dash server dash P. Warning invalid option dash P means that it's not actually getting the command line options that it should be getting. That's kind of weird. Why is that not happening? With command line options. Oh, I see. I see. We need to use. Let me see something here. Let's do this. I think what I'm going to have to do is actually do this. unix-options get opt. argv is our command line options. PLD P colon L colon D colon, and long options is going to be our list port equals, oh wait, in our example here we're not actually using this. Okay, this should now work as intended, although this also might give me some issues. Let's see what happens. Okay. Go back to this. Let's build this guy. Roz build. Echo server. Us. Okay. Okay, let's see this. 1000. Invalid option P. That means that it's still not actually getting what I expect it to be getting. With command line options is supposed to be doing what I thought it was. It's not doing what I think it's supposed to be doing. It's supposed to grab the CLI options. Actually, let's see if we can actually mimic this. Option. It'd be better if I could just do this. See what happens if I do that. And let's name this port just to make things a little more consistent. Because, okay, let's see what happens here. One of the issues with this, let's see. Okay, let's see this. And p-value is not a type list. Okay, so this means what I did before of having this P here is correct, but it's not actually grabbing the command line options from the see what happens here. Let me see what Unix options. So we could try and use with command line options here, but I don't think that this will work the way I think it will. Doing nothing. And it returns P, but it's not actually running the way I expect it to. And let's see here. So we're getting the same thing here. So it's not actually parsing here at this point. Let me go back to the reference manual here. Meters symbol. Let's do this. Let's see what happens if I do this. No, actually, let's see what happens. What is this doing? Okay, so it's doing what I think it should be doing. It's grabbing it, setting up the mapped options, saying that these are the ports. And then it's setting. When I use -P, it's not actually doing what I expect it to be doing. It's not actually grabbing the port information from options free nil, port nil, let parse options pp. Oh, I'm doing the same mistake I did before. Let me see if I did. With CLI options argv. Yes, this should do what I think it's supposed to be doing. Because CLI options is not the options that we're providing, it's the options that are being passed in from the command line. Now we're getting further. Import, let's see if we do this without it. Okay, so we now got something. Let's see if we could do this with a different port number. It might be running something already. It's not actually passing in the port. Let's see, what are we printing? Oops. Let's do print port here. Actually, do format t port. So I actually have more information here. Because I think the issue is I may be passing in a list to the listening socket rather than what?
In most of the whatever is read from the command line is a string, right? So
That's
convert that 8,000 into an integer.
That's right, and I think what's happening here is this guy is taking in with command line options. It's not doing what I thought it would be doing, which is if you look at it, it's supposed to take in and take this lambda, and it's supposed to do the split here, and it doesn't look like it's doing that because otherwise it's supposed to just set the value of the port into port, not the option. So I'm guessing that what's happening is that it's not recognizing that, and it's not doing what was intended. But I could be wrong. Let's see here. Okay, let's go and scroll this up.
Notice port was T, not the value.
Yeah, it is not the value. That is wrong. Why is that setting to T?
So just stop right there and look at the doc at below.
Enable usage summary, option variables. Command line options are optional. Usage summary is optional.
Is that optional in the correct place?
Is that optional in the right place?
Okay, so where the optional is, that's the arguments expected, correct?
That's correct.
So what is option variables?
Option variables are essentially the variables that are going to get bound to by the value that's parsed in by the command line options. At least that's how I understood it when I read the documentation. So when you pass in a variable, let's say -p or something like that, okay? Let's say that's a true or false flag, okay? It is recognizing that as being a value that from the underlying code has being assigned some true or false, and it would act accordingly.
So question, where port is, isn't that the option to say enable usage summary?
No, because it's in a separate list. You see, these are wrapped in, so the first list, so I guess I should go through these two things here. The first thing passed into command line options in Unix options is a list that will take in two optional arguments. One is the command line options, and the other is the enable usage summary. So the way you would write this is if you're going to use it, is you might have an optional command line options and then a T here, and that will print out a usage summary for you. Okay, like a T. Because then what that would do is this gets converted into this, which is printing out usage on how to actually, if the option doesn't exist, it'll print out the usage of it. I'm not using this just because specifically the usage that it's creating is essentially this usage summary of calling SBCL out there. So if we use this, for example, let's go ahead and compile this so you can actually see what happens if we use this.
The advantage of Go.
The advantage of what?
Go.
Oh, Go. I was like, yeah, Go has some pretty nice utilities for doing this kind of option stuff, but
No, I just meant speed of compiling.
Oh yeah. We do dash help here. This should actually print out the usage, but I'm guessing that because I haven't actually provided anything.
If you expand that, the -h is in there.
Yeah, it is. That's why I'm wondering why it's not doing that. Oh, right. Again. If we're following the notation of get_opt, which I think what it's doing, this has to be what's being passed in from the command line. That's why I'm messing this up. And folks wondering why save Lisp and die is taking a while is it's literally loading up the Lisp image first, setting everything up, and then it's actually dumping the image. So it takes a little longer to do compilation, because compilation in the Lisp sense is load everything up into the image and then save to file. It's not doing any. It's not actually doing a compilation in the normal static sense.
So, is it possible to create an image that already has the Unix options installed, so it doesn't have to quick load it every single time?
Yes, there is a possibility to do that, but I don't remember exactly what those are. So you can see that this is actually working, but it says invalid option, which is weird. Let me do port equals. It should not actually. Ah, I see now what the problem is. This here in the option variables is not indicating anything as to whether or not these variables are a specific are taking a specific parameter or not. So what I have to do is I have to do, I think I have to do something like this. Let me see if this works. Did this actually do what I expected to? Probably not. This is not compiling the way I expected to. This should be, because when you look at this, you see what's going on here. It's treating this as a Boolean flag, but it's not a Boolean flag. It created a shorthand notation for the option variable, but technically the option variable that we have here is not, it should take a value. So this is generating something that I didn't expect it to be generating. So the best way to fix this is really not use this for now, and actually just go ahead and set up a let around this guy here. With command line options, is not doing what I'm expecting it to do. It's actually doing something very different.
You want to look at the documentation?
I'm looking at I have the source open in a sense.
I was going to say, just explain the documentation to me then.
Sure, we can actually go in and then.
The example in the documentation.
This is what I figured it out. I'll show you what I have to do. Okay, are you ready for this? This is what it is. So I'm doing this wrong. I have to actually call in. That's why. In some of the examples, they're doing one thing and the others is doing. But if you read the actual documentation, this is what it's expecting it to do. It's expecting that with command line options, have you call getOp directly inside of it. It doesn't actually generate that call. You have to actually set this up. Short options. I am in the right thing. P colon, and then port equals. Done. Yeah. Done. This should do what I think it's supposed to be doing. There was a more complete example than the examples that I saw later down. And that's kind of why it wasn't showing up. Let's see if this is doing what I expect it to do. It should print out that. And it should,
Just try the minus P without the space.
no. Grabbing the wrong thing. What did I not? Okay, so according to with command line options, it takes a list of symbols and attempts to bind values passed in on the command line to them according to a set of rules. For every symbol named in option variables with command line options creates a variable. Oh.
So port is not a symbol. Is it?
Port is not a symbol.
In the code.
In the code, it's not a symbol. Well, it's a symbol in the sense that it can be bound to, right? It can be a setup. But what this is saying is for every symbol in this list here, it creates a new variable and creates a long option version of that variable.
Okay, could you just explain the example to me, please?
Here.
I put the link in the chat.
Here's two examples in. Let me just share this so that everyone can see this. Let me switch over to. Let's do this and enable desktop viewing. Okay, so in Unix options, if we go to the Unix options example, quick ref, because for some reason it's not taking me there quickly. There we go. If we go to, and let me also, I forgot, I also should share my screen here. Okay. So there's two examples here. This one here, which is the example that's saying that for each option in the options here, in this list, it's going to create two options for you. One is a -p, and another a -print, --print. Okay, and based on that, it will go ahead and generate.
Not that example. I think one lower down.
You're probably talking about this other one here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in here, in this example, we have a list of command line options that are passed in. Hold on. Let's just first go through and make sure that this is it. So my understanding of this is essentially what it was doing, which is it's going to create a new variable. But let's read on here. Each entry in option variables can be a short list, which is the first item is the symbol to be used. The second is a documentation string or a full option spec, providing greater detail as to what it's supposed to be doing.
So first of all, what's the -p?
The -p in this example here is going to be bound to the shorthand for print.
So that's a binary option.
That's a binary option. That's right.
And I is the same as in?
I is the same as in file. It should be the same as in file, but right now what it's ended up, no, sorry, I is the same as meters. You see what this is doing here though is it's it's grabbing each argument, which is already parsed from the command line. It created this list for you. And it is intelligently figuring out what is in the command line options, and then what is not set to the command line options. Let's, where is CLI options here? If enabled, then we'll print out a usage summary with the option variables. That is not what I need to care for. Additional options. Oh. In addition, symbols and option variables are Boolean by default. That is, they are passed bound to either T or symbols. Okay, so that's the reason why we're getting a Boolean option for port for some reason. Symbols listed after meters, if it is present, are considered parameter options. This special character has to be put in order for me to actually say that it's a parameter option. That's what we're missing. Okay, so let's go back. Take this guy, switch it to this, and let me go and share my screen with you guys here, and then see if I can somehow manage to get that meter special thing. And then we can do a quick code review to make sure that we're all on the same page on how this piece works.
I was just going to say, now that we've gone through that example, maybe you can consolidate that with the example you're looking at in the code itself.
Are you talking? Yeah, you're talking about here in our example, in our code here.
No, when I asked you to look at an example, you said you were looking at examples from the source code for the package.
Oh no, that was straight up in the documentation string, which is what this generated. What you're seeing here is the same thing that I was looking at. What you saw in the web page, in the quick reference documentation, is what I saw in the source code, which I was looking through as an example. There weren't any tests associated with this. Unix-opts is a little better because it actually has unit tests that we can actually go through and do a quick code review. Unix-options does not. Unix-opts does. Ops is a newer version of this kind of command line parsing that matches opt parse, which I was supposed to be covering today too as well, but I didn't expect us to go down this rabbit hole. Okay, so let's go back to this. This guy needs a special character, but how am I supposed to get that special symbol character that's supposed to say that this is a meter?
Sure, it's not an artifact of the printing.
What? Oh, yeah, that might be an artifact of the printing. But we shall see. If symbols after parameters, if it is present. So he said para. Let's see if what this does. Because that's a paragraph digraph there, but I'm not entirely sure how it generated that. Let's see. Maybe it's like that. Let me see if that complains. didn't complain. Let's see what the generated is. It's generating an extra argument that shouldn't really be there, but we will see what that does. Let's go back to this.
Look at the GitHub page. It's an ampersand.
It's an... Oh, right. It is an ampersand. That's what I wrote. Parameters. Ampersand percent. Because I realized that it was probably because of the markup. But we will see what this is doing. It's dumping. Okay. Let's see this. Let's do a -h. See what happens. It is creating an extra argument here that should not be there. But okay. And actually, by that logic, actually there's a couple of things that we could also clean out here. This guy here is not needed anymore because we are providing that. Let's see if I can do that. There. It's cleaning a couple of things up because based on what I just read, everything should be hunky-dory now. Get our invalid port. See what happens here. Still gets nothing. Interesting. Based on what this was saying earlier, we should not have to actually provide anything to this.
Could we just use the example and get that, make sure that works, and then put
Okay.
it to this?
We'll comment this guy out. You're saying get the example working. Okay. And
We forgot the first part. Minus pi in minus out file, out and another. Arguments that, yeah.
And one more. What was that? Yeah, this is not. This is
didn't
printing
pass
all
any
tree.
arguments though.
Those the CLI options.
Yeah, you pulled it without any arguments. So yeah, so minus p. Yep.
You don't have to pick this guy. That's what I'm saying. This here that you just passed in. That the reason why it's optional is because it's grabbing it from the command line. The CLI options in the signature. The reason why it's that is because you're grabbing it from the command line. It should be be bound to some global variable that should be passed in, just like in the example that we saw in the documentation that didn't take in any parameters. It's the same idea. So if you did this way, if we didn't pass in anything like this, I would be expecting us to now provide. These will all be nil if we don't provide in any command line options. But if we provide command line options, they'll be all true, although they technically should be true, and then the in file and then the out file. Did I spell parameters wrong? No, I didn't. Okay. So it's building. So if you pass in nothing, these should all be nil. But if you pass in something, these should all be true. You see that difference there? So I didn't have to actually necessarily pass in the command line options, but these are all being treated the same for some reason. They should not be all treated Boolean variables. But they are. Which means there's a bug in Unix options.
Why is there a separate ampersand in there?
It's so based on if you recall what the documentation of what Unix options with CLI options does, it takes in each one of these option variables. Think of each of these option variables as an option, okay? And you can actually label them. This can actually go and say print, and then you can provide a description summary for this. For example, will print to screen or something like this, okay? And if you provide enable summary, what this will do is it will take your description and it will print it out into usage summary. Print. Did I say print? Oh, shoot. Let me call this P screen. Okay. This should actually generate options for you. So now if we do this and we do -h, which will give me an invalid option dash. Screen is unbound. For some reason it's thinking that this is unbound. Let me just double check this.
I'll have to go in 5. That's 9 p.m.
Yeah, I understand. That's fine. So, long story short, the enable usage summary should have taken in the list. You can actually pass in a list for each of the parameters. But again, like I said, it looks like there is a bug here because parameters is not actually being treated as a keyword. Instead, what it's being treated as has another argument. Okay, that's kind of what I was trying to get at. So if we look at the example that we were doing here, and we just do an expansion of this, expansion of this, that parameters is now created as an extra parameter. It's treating this as a parameter. Okay, it's not treating it as what the document, the author was originally thinking that it should be, and that is, it's a symbol that if it finds it in the list of parameters that it's extracting to generate, it should actually say, okay, everything after this guy, everything after this is considered a variable that's taking a non-Boolean flag has a value. As a result, this is this library is just not doing what it. This macro is not doing what it's supposed to be intended. So the way to fix that is just literally just doing. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to do it this way. Is instead of using this, sadly, we're going to have to use get-opt directly. And the way we would do that is we do this, do argv.
Do you know if the tests actually work?
There aren't any tests, from what I can tell, in this library.
Well, I'm looking at something on GitHub.
That might be a newer one, because normally tests are created. Oh, it's created as a separate. It's a Lisp file, not a separate package. Okay, that's the reason why I didn't see it.
Yeah, test.list. I'm just wondering, does that file actually run?
Well, I haven't tried it when I loaded it into the image, but we could certainly try that. Let's see. Okay, so if I loaded this already into the image, this should be available. Unix options tests. doesn't look like it's here. Let me see if I can grab it. Let me see if I can open up that file specifically. Roswell, local, no, not local projects. What is it? Lisp. Always forget where it is located. Sorry. Let's do this. Where is that guy? It's in Roswell. Lisp. Quick Lisp, that's right. This Quick Lisp. Software. Yes. Do unix-options. Test.lisp. Okay. I may not have 5 a.m. loaded. Give me a second. 5 a.m. Okay. Reminds me, I have to do a little thing.
What's 5 a.m.?
5 a.m. is a unit testing framework. It's another unit testing framework that's around for doing different types of tests. It gives a nice little macro called is that allows you to just take in a function argument and then pass in the appropriate test predicates. So like here, for example, now that I have it loaded, it should actually just give me a signature, but it looks like it's because I'm not in this package. It's not doing that. Let's see. Can't find the patch. Oh, this is not actually loaded. Okay. Bend this. Load this. And MRS. Now, to run these tests, if I remember correctly, with 5 a.m., you have to. There should be a test suite.
Look at the one with the parameters for the options. Sorry. With CLI options.
Options test. Here we go.
So looking at that first one, the A, S, and F are supposed to be binary? Or is it just right. The A and S?
The A, S, and F are supposed to be binary, as I understood it. All three of them are. But let me see if I could run this test. This guy is 5 a.m. Run. Test. Is there any way to pass in?
Alright, just try run all tests.
Hold on. I think this is just running test spec. I just need to specify the test spec with CLI options test. I think this is just a function call. is undefined. Okay, fine. Run all tests. Didn't run anything, huh? Okay.
Okay, let's reconvene next week.
Okay. This looks like this is taking a little longer than I thought. Sorry, folks. We're going to be continuing this next week with other options too as well. With our other options library, unix-opts and uiop. Until next time, have all a good evening, good night, good morning, good afternoon, and I'll see you guys next week.